Joining us now to talk more about this case, criminal law specialist and attorney Lou Shapiro. Lou, thank you so much for your time. Closing arguments start tomorrow, so what should we expect from both the defense and the prosecution?
So this has been a very emotionally charged trial on both sides. And you're going to hear arguments, very polarized arguments. The defense is going to be arguing that this is just a 17-year-old kid trying to do the right thing who ended up being attacked, ambushed, and was fighting for his life. The prosecution is going to argue that this was all provoked by Rittenhouse. A very different story. He's a vigilante. He went there to look for trouble. He wanted something like this, and this is what he got. So it remains to be seen what the jury's going to do in light of those arguments.
As you mentioned, there have been some emotional moments in this trial. During testimony, Rittenhouse himself sobbed. I want to listen to that clip.
There were three people right there.
Now, how might that scene have an impact on the jury? And is there enough evidence to support Rittenhouse's assertion that he acted in self-defense?
I think everybody will argue that that moment was the most crucial moment in the trial for both sides. It defines the whole case because it shows you the state of mind. Rittenhouse is breaking down. He seems to be crying. He's not an actor. It's very hard to rehearse something like this. Some saying it's crocodile tears, but most people will say this kid looks traumatized. That is real. Whether it's a panic attack or whether it's cries, this is not somebody that looks like he's out for trouble. This looks like somebody who's damaged, and we can expect the defense to take this to town in closing argument.
Yeah, there were some critics, including LeBron James, of all people, who were pushing back, saying that he was faking it there, but that's definitely been a source of debate. As a defense attorney, how would you advise Kyle Rittenhouse at this point?
So these are critical moments because the jury is going to be watching his every moment. And his defense attorneys are probably telling them, Kyle, we got to quit while we're ahead. We're exactly where we want to be in this point of the trial where we think we have raised reasonable doubt that you use self-defense. Don't blow it. Don't make any weird smirks. Don't act out. Just quit while you're ahead. Keep a poker face. Keep humble. And let's go take this into closing argument for hopefully an acquittal for their side.
The judge in this case, Bruce Schroeder, has been scrutinized for his handling of the case. There was his phone going off playing God Bless the USA, which is a song that can be heard at Trump rallies. On Veterans Day, he asked if anyone in the courtroom served and a defense witness had, so the judge encouraged a round of applause for him. And the judge also repeatedly had run-ins with the prosecution. I want to play a clip of that.
When you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea why you would do something like that. And it gives, well, I'll leave it at that. So I don't know what you're up to.
May I respond?
Now, critics say the judge has been biased toward the defense. Do you agree, or is this being overblown?
You know, Jay, I'm glad you raised this point. First of all, what viewers need to understand is most of these, we'll call them outbursts or admonishments by the judge, are not done in the presence of the jury. For example, that clip that we just saw was when the jury was outside of the room. And that's when the judge was telling the prosecutor, what have you done? How could you comment on somebody's fundamental right to remain silent in front of the jury? And typically a judge will then call the jury back in and give them what's called a curing instruction, which instructs the jury to disregard what happened prior to that. But overall, I think based on what we've seen in the courtroom in front of the jury, it is a fair trial. The judge is calling balls and strikes like any judge. There is an underlying tone, though, that can be argued that the judge has reservations about this prosecution. Maybe they're going a little hard against a 17-year-old. Maybe there is a lot of evidence of self-defense that the judge may feel, why is this case even before me? Or why is he being tried as an adult? But more often than not, this judge is being fair. He's controlling his temperament, but he's admonishing when it's appropriate in this case.
But at the same time, I mean, one of the defense witnesses, I know it was Veterans Day, but to encourage a round of applause, and the jury was in the room when that happened, right before the defense witness was taking the stand. Does that strike you as unusual at all? Do we see that ever?
It is unusual. But look, this is not a judge who's used to high-profile cases. It was Veterans Day. He could argue that he was just showing respect to the troops and a patriot to the U.S. to then take the argument and say, well, therefore he's a Trump supporter, or he's trying in some way to insinuate to the jury that they should align with Rittenhouse as a result, I think that's a bit of a stretch, and I don't think that's going to be an issue going into closing argument.
And just briefly, when might we get a verdict, and do you see this going one way or the other?
I think we'll get a verdict in 1 to 2 days. The trial was not long. There's not a lot of witnesses and evidence to go through. I think most jurors by now, before closing argument, have already made up their mind as to whether they feel Rittenhouse was exercising lawful self-defense or not. So based on that, I think we expect a pretty quick verdict. Probably worst case, I think a hung jury after the way Rittenhouse testified on the stand and the way the prosecutor's witnesses did not come through for them on their end in the beginning of the trial.
And I know a lot of interest in this case for sure. Lou Shapiro, thank you for your insight. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.